Welcome to another episode of Speak Sex. I am your host, Eurydice. I am Greek from the island of Lesbos. I am the writer of 3 books on female sexuality, Satyricon, F32 and F32 The Second Coming. I have been a staff writer on female sexuality in particular at Spin magazine for years, wrote the Sex Files column for Gear magazine for the life of the magazine. So I have been for the past 20 years a sex expert, and I'm also a multimedia artist with female sexuality as my main theme. And I'm a feminist, a post-feminist, so I'm doing this podcast as a field research for ways to liberate, name, make conscious female sexuality, and by doing that, change the world. Today's guest is Kissik. She's a fellow artist with a long and established career showing in galleries in the US, Canada, and around the world. And she is here as a private citizen.
Yes, I am. As a creative female.
Exactly. To share with us what she has learned in her sexual journey about being a sex maker, taker, giver. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I am wondering if you can give us a little, overview of your sexual emergence from teenage until now, and how it has changed, what you have learned both about your own body and your own sexuality, but also about how to access sex, how to present yourself to men, and how to deal with all the rules and definitions that we grow up with and
so
are
many
handed.
double standards.
Right.
That's been the hardest part. The double standards drive me crazy. Yep. Well, interestingly, I think this cannot be a normal story. I'll run it by you. I wasn't sure if I'm going to share this, but it has to be said. So growing up, I used to play nun, just to set the real early backstage. That was like the first thing. That was what I would play. While everybody was playing princess, I was bride of Jesus, crawling around on my knees with a rosary on my neck and a hood. Well, I went away with my girlfriends when we were, I think, 17, and we went to the beach one day. And I remember saying to them, they were all like, "Oh, Kathy, let's go in the water. Let's go for a swim." And I said, "I can't. It's my female time." And they said, "Yes. So?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I don't have anything in. Like, what's going to happen?" And they said, "Well, I see." I said, "I have to go to the bathroom as well, and I have something in." That was the story. And they said, "But so what? So what if you have something, if you've got female protection and you have to pee? Like that, both of those things can work out." And I had never realized that where you peed from was not your vagina. Because I had never looked, and I was so mad. I went home that day and I said to my mother, "I cannot," and my mother is a registered nurse, mind you, "I cannot believe that you never told me." And, because I grew up, you're not supposed to look down there. You're not supposed to touch yourself. Like, it was never spoken about. And so I never did, which, yeah. And then for that, so until I was 17, if I had my period, I did not go to the bathroom.
Wow.
So I was really, really angry with my mother about that. But that sets like the stage of what I came from, which is not even being connected with my body.
You felt that your urethra was bleeding.
I just thought it was the same thing. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. I don't know what I even thought the visual in my head was, but I had never touched myself. Right. I had never even looked. And that's just staggering to me, to be so disconnected, right? That you don't even know
Well, that's what parents do to you. Having them around in the house.
My God, right? So, So I think and then I lost my virginity also when I was 17, almost 18. So I came from a really, I want to say I was uptight. Like, I wasn't, I was uptight.
And who did you lose your virginity to? Lose being an interesting word here.
Actually, I felt like I gave it away because I wanted to get rid of it. But
so interesting, the disconnect.
I did want to get rid of it. I gave it to my boyfriend at the time, who was 5 years older than I was, which was kind of strange too. Like it was a weird dynamic, and it was a very, very unhealthy relationship. It was my first relationship, and I'd grown up and didn't have a very healthy role model in my parents because they weren't ideally matched, as many people weren't in that age group. That generation of people, you married the first person you knew, like in high school, and they were high school sweethearts. And I mean, it's very unlikely that you're going to grow at the same rate, and you're lucky if you grow together, but most often you grow apart. And then, there's no out for women now. There was really no out for women back then. If you had a kid with someone, to try to even get divorced and just not end up in the streets, I think was almost impossible. Yeah. So there's a lot of that relationship.
So you
that was my model. Is what I'm saying. That was my relationship model.
Yeah. And try to protect yourself from getting pregnant as long as you can. That was the relationship model too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Pregnancy was like death.
Because
then you'd have to marry the man and be the servant to the man because he knocked you up. I mean, that's what I understood. Not that it was ever discussed.
Oh, right.
But I felt, oh my God, I had sex. Oh my God, if I get pregnant, I'll be like controlled, taken over, possessed by the devil.
Well, oddly, I never thought that, but in time, I now think that. I never thought that, but I've come to realize that, that's exactly what it is for most people. Like, that's the bargain you're signing, which is awful because it's been fed into our culture and it's been fed into the female mind that that's the best that we can aspire to. And sometimes I wonder why? Like, why? What is it that men have been so afraid of that they've had to put this fear upon us? Because they're physically stronger than us. So obviously they're afraid of our mental capabilities and our other capabilities. So they've been trying to keep us down this whole time. Because when I figure out what is going on and how can we change it.
Men have been afraid of not knowing who their offspring is. First of all, period. That's simple. We can have sex. We are built physically in a way that we're going to lie in the jungle with a man, then he falls asleep. While we're coming, we're shouting and screaming, and the nearest man hears that there is a woman in heat, and he comes, and while the previous one is sleeping, after he has come, the next one comes in us also. We're screaming, and then he passes out, then the next one comes, etc. And in some way, we can keep this up in that high, that creative adrenaline high, until either physically we're exhausted or we have been impregnated. That's the biological model.
Well, I understand.
That's who we are built to be. But what happens is that the man, in order to have any control of society, he needs most of all to control his offspring. Who is he? So in this model that I presented in the jungle, we don't know who the father is. Right. She just has a baby. The baby stays within the women folk.
So what I'm hearing though is it's all about their ego and their power. Like that still is what it boils down to. They're afraid of losing.
Well, I don't know if it's. I think it's much more, primitive than that.
But
I mean,
if it's
of course,
primitive,
it's about.
Are we evolving? That's what I'm saying. Are women more mentally evolved then? Because there comes a certain point where you have to tell your body what it's doing and override it. Like, we have to be living consciously and not just riding off the code of the DNA.
That's right.
That's what evolution is. Like, and
the DNA has shifted because we've had patriarchy for so long that all of our cultural habits have trumped our natural, predisposition. But we do have DNA testing finally. And that is amazing because it can reassure men, right? As we know.
Oh, yeah.
That they can have a DNA test and find out who the father of this child is. This is like brand new.
No,
this is this generation.
Okay, but like I understand that, and I think that's great, but I think that the problem is so much deeper in the consciousness than...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That I'm so tired of just appeasing the men and their ego. Oh, big deal, so they can know who their baby is. Like, oh, it's just so tiring coddling to them and trying to create things for them. I want it to change. I want it to be... I think women have always been so much stronger and needed to, and that there's a real fear in them about that. I honestly do. I think it's like the burning of the witches. I think that there's a power that is innate in women. And once technology is on our side and we really don't need them financially anymore, it's going to force them to have to evolve. And as we know, women, because we've been evolving all along, because we've had to, and just because we've been moving faster than the men, that's just the nature of gender and the feminine. That is the nature in the Hermetic principles of gender. So the men are going to have to catch up and do the hard work. And I think that's what they're scared of. It's going to be really uncomfortable for them. And why don't they go in? Because their gender is male. They go out. That's the way their energy flows. So it is going to be uncomfortable for them to have to pull that back in and look at it. Whereas women, we are receptacles. We are open. That is our gender. So it's been much easier because we've been doing it throughout, collecting, taking in. And now we need to turn out. Now we need to, because we've been learning how to do it all along. We've been learning how to nurture our masculine principle, and with that comes less of a need for men. I hate to say it, but as we become fully realized as people, And that should be what everybody is on a journey and on this planet to do, because then we can really create something wonderful together. When the masculine principle is fully realized and the feminine principle, and when it's all mixed up together and blended, and when those two things can come together in combination and exact equilibrium, can you imagine the beauty of this planet?
No.
And that's where we're headed, and that's where we have to keep our mind on.
Yeah. I agree, of course. That's where we have to keep our mind on and our focus on.
And it's going to be difficult.
Our manifesting power.
Women, we're gaining it now. Like, feel it, feel the power. Like, it's the shift.
Let's hope so.
I believe it. I really do. Because if anything, we're outbreeding them. There's more women than men, and we're going to be in more positions of power.
That's true.
And all we're going to do, we know the nonsense. We know the bullshit, We all know it because we've all lived it. So that's my dream anyway.
Yeah. Mine too.
But sister. I mean, on another note, when I was in school, I remember they told us at the very beginning, male artists at the museum school in Boston, which was a great school. So they said male artists make 28% more. So you might want to think about that when you develop your signature. So I decided I was going to sign all my artwork Kissik, just based on that. And it worked, and it served me well, because many people thought especially looking at the artwork, which was largely architectural and exteriors, which generally tend to be a male topic. Interestingly enough, people would think I was a man, and I'd get approached for shows even for that from other countries. Which was interesting, and they'd always be surprised there was a female, but then they couldn't rescind based on that. So
Okay, let's
that
talk
was a little
about sex.
tangent. Yeah, let's talk about sex. So then I told you we were back to, okay, how did I lose my virginity? I lost my virginity to this guy. I gave it to him because I was tired of being, I think I was like the last virgin of all my friends, you know.
The Last Virgin.
Yes.
It's a good title.
The last virgin. And it was in the bell tower of a church. So
Lovely.
that's kind
Very
of,
appropriate.
it's kind of classic. Yeah. And, you know, it sucked.
Yeah, of course.
It sucked. It sucked for me. It sucked for me for years, I think. And then it got good, and it's...
So for how long would you say? How many years before
before
you
it
started
got
to
good?
figure out how to get pleasure and how to find orgasm?
Probably took me 3 years to figure out.
That the clitoris exists.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And then 5 years. After 5 years, I was having really good sex. You know, like then there was no stopping me. I was in art school. I was having like great sex.
And that was
Crazy
because,
sex.
so how did that discovery happen? It just by partner, as you changed to a next partner, you were
Yeah.
able to do something
Well,
new
because
or extra? Or
I think because of that age group is all about exploring, and plus if you're in art school, you're really about exploring. So I think those two things together led to a real quick, just why not type of attitude with it, you know. And I was so mortified, you know, that of the first 17 years, like I knew that I needed some real work, and I had to have some real catch up here.
right.
So I think that's kind of how that happened. But yeah.
Okay, so you went through art school, and in the process of getting your degree, you also got to know your body much better.
Oh, much better. Yeah, art school. You can thank art school for that. You can thank art school for that, right? Down to all the nude posing, too.
Exactly. The nude
Yeah.
posing has been very liberating. And the younger you get exposed to it, the better.
Oh, my God, I know. Now with all the selfies, it's like people are going to be totally over it, I think.
But the selfies are so curated and edited, and I thought that what was liberating about the nude posing is that there were all kinds of bodies. The penis was never hard.
No, never.
And when you're at that age, I hadn't seen limp, soft dick. I just hadn't. Because, you know, if you're like 16, 17, the only occasion, or 18, the only occasion where you'll see the penis is when it's hard for you. And
hope
it comes
so.
out. Yeah.
You would hope so.
So to me, it was very liberating and educational just to see the nude model of all different ages, body shapes, you know, and modes of rest and, you know,
And
semi-rest.
we usually had like really questionable body types in there because it's people who needed money.
Right.
So it's like people who were just going to go buy a six-pack right after they put their clothes on.
Yeah.
We had that, and we also had my sister, which
Oy.
is very interesting, who decided that of all the art schools in Boston, she was going to pose nude at mine.
Wow.
And that was
That's hard.
weird.
Yeah.
Because people thought we were the same person. And I was trying to make an identity for myself. And everybody would say, oh, I drew you today. And, oh. It would
Yeah,
drive
no,
me crazy.
It's healthy if you can switch back and forth, but it's, you know, a lot to ask someone so young. But yeah, it was great. I felt that I wish that everyone would get access to that, because it kind of helped cure the voyeurism associated with like the naked, exposed, prone
it really
body.
does. It does.
Because the body being so quiet and open is very fuckable in its posing, but those bodies are not at all.
No.
You know, the pornographic model.
It's true.
But it allows you to kind of work through your curiosity.
Yeah,
you know,
it
and
does. It's
I
very
loved
safe.
it.
It's a safe way, you're right,
Yeah,
to do that.
it's a way to learn, to acquire fluency with the human body without actually having to sleep with all of these bodies, or, you know, and I wish we had more of it, you know. I mean, I'm not a nudist, but I can see how being naked around the house in front of the children, or being naked as often as possible without shame, is extremely helpful
the
for
shame
both
thing.
genders.
The shame thing's
Right.
ludicrous.
And especially helpful for the young ones, the toddlers, so that they don't associate the body with something that is embarrassing or has to be hidden.
I know. It's awful what we do to them in that way.
Yeah.
You know?
We just tell them no
We
all the time.
And just shut it down. And it's like, it just crushes their little soul to be putting that on them.
Yeah.
I know that there's anything unnatural or ugly about the body that needs to be covered at any time, or that there's anything that they could even do to their body that would be considered like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What would change if the
you
shame
imagine?
went away?
But our whole educational approach is to say no. That's how you teach them. Oh, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Oh, no. There is no positive reinforcement except when they repress themselves. And then you're like,
right.
Oh, good girl,
You're
good boy. I can't even go back there.
You're so right.
Such a brutal way to raise, our children whom we love more than ourselves.
Well, and it's cultural too.
Yeah, we're trying to protect them from this like nasty patriarchal culture, but we shouldn't.
Right. Well, we should be changing this nasty
Exactly.
patriarchal culture
Exactly.
rather than trying to modify humans to fit within it.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Limit
we've got
them.
we should completely be just letting them be the little beauties they are and changing the world for them.
Yes.
I know we've got it backwards, but you know what? We're turning it around. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Women are taking...
I'm with you.
I believe that. I know so many strong women from around the world that finally are getting to positions where they can call the shots. And I just think, God, in 10 more years, forget it.
Let's hope so. 10 more years is super fast, super soon.
Yeah, men are going to have to evolve.
Well, I think that one of the messages that I try to pass, and that we need to pass, one of the messages that we need to pass is to kind of separate sex and money, transaction, not have sex in exchange for something. It doesn't have to be money, but it's the transaction. Not to have sex in exchange for
anything,
shelter or
anything
drink
other than
or
the
a movie or exactly.
Yeah.
If we women could free our sexuality from that and just have it for its own sake, for its experience, because we need it the way guys need it, period, that would also be transformative.
That would be very transformative. I'm with you working on that one.
Okay, so we'll be back for more conversation with Kathy Kissik. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you Friday. Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I am Greek from the island of Lesbos. I'm the writer of 3 books on female sexuality, the writer of the Sex Files column and sex investigative pieces at Spin Magazine, Gear Magazine, an artist who has worked exclusively on issues of female sexuality and specifically the dichotomy between our bodies and our minds, our souls and our hormones, and how to bridge it, how to live a sexually unified life. And that's what this podcast is dedicated to. My guest today is Kathy Kissik. She's an artist and wise woman. And we are talking about liberating female sexuality from both the transaction involved in it as well as the silence attached to it. So how do we, as women, have sex without wanting anything in exchange, including someone's loyalty? It could be as basic as that. I will have sex with you if you're true to me and don't look at another female, because then I will no longer have sex with you. It could be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be even
Right.
the dinner or the movie or, the trip or the
Right.
more specifically transactional thing. It doesn't have to be the
I wonder-
marriage.
Right. I wonder how loyalty would fare if the physical transactional needs were removed. Would we still feel such a need? Does that need
To
arise?
control the other.
Right. Does that need arise out of a sense of survival, really, for a person? Rather than possessing the other person and not wanting them with another. I know in the past, I've had a relationship where I didn't actually care if he slept around. I mean, I didn't want to know about it, but I didn't want him to miss out on life's experiences because of a guilt that would be felt towards me. That's really how I felt in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So it was an open relationship. Just don't tell me. Don't speak. Don't tell.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, and I continued that on actually with another boyfriend because that worked so well, and for me that felt like true love. Not stifling their experiences. That to me, letting them really just be who they are is love.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Some people are better at it than others. Some people do it successfully and then no longer can take it.
Well, my ego didn't want to know, and I didn't want it to impact me in any way.
Right. Yeah.
I always wanted to be the first choice. But if they were living their life and in the
moment,
something came up, I didn't want them to
right,
not do something that they felt inclined to do because of me.
Yes. So in a sense, emotional loyalty, but not necessarily.
I guess
physical
respect. I guess
loyalty.
I never thought of it as loyalty. I just thought of it as respect, like just a respect of. But I guess in a way that's contractual. There.
Yeah. Well, there has to be a contract, and there is nothing wrong with a contract so long as you have the words to negotiate it clearly, so both partners understand. Because sometimes we kind of beat around the bush and we don't say it exactly.
No, and I got to say, it wasn't said exactly in the first one, and that's why the second relationship it was said clearly, because I realized what had fallen short, and that you really do have to spell out the parameters of that. And that had all come up for me because I had gotten really ill and was facing death's door and had to miss a lot of opportunities, and thought about my partner and thought, I don't want them missing out on life because I'm sick. That's not how I want it to be. Like when you really look in, when you do soul searching. So that's how I came to that even place, which...
Nice.
Yeah.
And then the next time, having experienced it, you understood it better.
I understood that it was
and
actually...
verbalized it better.
Yeah. I spelt it clear. And my partner was like, all right, cool.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys live together?
Yes, we did.
And how long did that relationship last?
It lasted 7 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And
in the end, it was just friendship. It dissipated to friendship. But but it was fun. It was a fun friendship. So.
And I know that you had a relationship with someone who was committed or was married.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's another thing, too.
Right.
And, lately I've wondered about that, too, because I just don't think, I was in that relationship and it was okay. Well, I thought it was okay because his wife knew. And that made me feel like, okay, all parties are on board. But I don't know about that. I'm not so sure about that. Like, maybe it's just best to stay out of people's business. I'm not sure. But then I get confused and I think, but what separates that from what I was doing when I had a boyfriend, but it was open? Like, it's so hard to know what somebody else's setup is, yet you don't want to be the source of pain in someone else's life.
Exactly.
And so that's like, I'm not sure.
And you can't
how to balance your
trust
actions.
your partner to tell you the truth, unfortunately.
Well, they can only tell you their truth.
But they would like things to be.
And their truth isn't their partner's truth.
Right.
And it's not your truth. It's just a version of the truth.
Exactly.
And it's going to be very favorable to them.
Yes.
Because they live with it.
Yeah.
So, so.
And they want you, and they want to keep their marriage.
But on the other
end,
they
will massage
I don't
the
think
truth.
People, I don't even know what I think of marriage, like, at this point anymore.
Yeah.
How outdated it is, and how old we now live to be with our partner. Like, that's insane to think of people married for 60 years with one partner.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You've got to really be lucky and grow together for that to work.
Yeah. Well, it was easier for our parents' generation because they didn't have alternatives, didn't think they had alternatives, definitely. The women.
Right.
But in our generation, the divorce rate shows exactly that more and more couples, once the kids are out of the house, divorce, even at great financial cost. And imagine if there was no financial penalty, I think that would be like 90% at the current moment of marriages would naturally dissolve after the children go to college.
You've heard that I think it was a comedian that came up with it who was saying that marriages should be like licenses, and they're good for like 7 years, and then you have to renew it.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
think
perfect.
so too.
Because the only reason to get married anymore is to protect the children in all kinds of ways, but foremost financially, and share the responsibility. Once the children are out of the house and they've gone to college, I think it should expire. Everybody gets their life back, their name back. And knowing that, they would plan for it.
At 18.
Yeah, but they would...
All marriages
people
dissolve.
would, like husbands and wives, so to speak, which I would hope we would change those terms because they're disgusting. Too weighed with other meanings.
Yeah, what words could we have instead?
Well, I didn't like the word wife at all and the word husband at all. I've never been able to use it.
I think of husbandry, That's what I think of with husband.
Husbandry. Yeah, I haven't been able to use either because it just feels I feel the cage shut in
it's kind
in
of
my
just
face.
Partners. Like, really, for me, that would be what it would be about.
Yeah,
a partner.
My family partner or my
life right
co-parent.
now partner. No, my life right now partner.
Yeah. I like co-parent because,
if you have a kid.
If you have well,
that's
the only reason to get married is to have
or
a
dog.
kid.
And you're
I would
them.
not get married if you don't have a kid. It makes no sense, to kind of like bind yourself legally.
Well, unfortunately,
financially.
it does in the terms of healthcare in America. They still make that a reason to get.
Well, you can pay for your own fucking healthcare. Just go on Obamacare and pay the money instead of marrying someone because his company pays for the spouse. Well, healthcare. It's an absurd reason. The same as getting the green card. It should not be how we get.
Right, I think it's absurd,
system.
But it's a perk.
The system is pushing women
to
give up their rights and their freedoms in exchange for those things.
Yep, exactly. Which is why you don't like the term wife.
Oh, I hate it. I grew up with only wife models. I didn't see an unmarried woman around me, my whole childhood. It was my mom, my aunt, my grandma, my grandaunt, and every friend of my mom or my aunt or whoever, they were all wives. And they were all saddled at all times with these men. They were never without the man. Even when they would get together for coffee.
Can you imagine how oppressive that would be?
Extremely rarely they would meet without the man. Because we would always gather with the husbands. Extremely rarely they would meet for coffee, because while the men worked, they had to do all kinds of stuff, so they were always running around. But when they rarely met for coffee, the men were so present in the room. They would come to my mom, and I remember them in the kitchen, and she would read their coffee grinds or their tea leaves, and I felt those husbands right there, yoking them, like sitting on their shoulders.
Wow. What do you think they're so scared of?
No, they were owned. It wasn't even scared.
Oh, right.
They didn't even have another...
Right. They didn't even have enough respect to have a feeling for them.
That
right. They were an object.
Those men were there listening in.
Yuck.
Even when they were not present.
Now, I see what you're saying.
They got their entire identity, self-worth from them. They were passed on. I mean, my mom went from her father's house to my dad's house.
Right.
Her parents chose her husband. And then my dad, who claimed that we made decisions as a family, had the veto power. So he was the tyrant.
Yes. I love the family decisions with him having veto power.
The veto power. And so from one
That's a Trump statement, if
owner
I ever heard it.
to the next male owner with whom she still is. And, she will be until he dies.
Yep.
So this is the span of her life. A woman from Lesbos, a lesbian woman, nonetheless.
A lesbian from Lesbos.
So sad. So to me, that's a form of slavery. It's a socio-political, financial,
well, I guess that's
legal.
What we're talking about, that we're trying to break free of, right?
Right.
Ultimately, when we really, sexual slavery. Because that's the commodity that we're paying with.
That's the commodity.
Because that's what the commodity that they're demanding, that they've been demanding. And
you marry them, you have to give them the sex.
Exhausting.
Done. Not even under discussion. They are the husbands, they get the sex whenever they want to.
No, I thought you said you had some questions.
What a social contract. Well, I still have more questions of you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So what have you discovered about the female sexuality, your body? What does your body love the most? And
oh, wow. I've discovered that you can have a clitoral orgasm as well as a vaginal orgasm. That was my newest discovery not long ago. I won't send any shout outs out.
That's good. So how does that work?
Well, I think I do you remember me telling you about it? I was so amazed. It's just, I guess you have your clit stimulated at the same time you're having intercourse. And I mean, I've always been multi-orgasmic anyway. So that there might be some luck to it and some genetic component. I'm not sure, but oh my. That's all I can say. And for me now, that's the holy grail,
And it was a happy accident, right?
Well, yeah. I didn't know it was coming. I certainly didn't know.
No pun coming?
No. So, yeah. So that's really something that really blew my mind. And I have to say, that's a good positive thing. Let's hope there's more things like that out there for me to find.
And what about, do you have multiple orgasms, anal and clitoral, or is there any other combination that you've experienced? Or when you say multiple, you mean one after the other?
Oh, I mean one after another. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I haven't had any other doubles like that. 2 at once. I didn't even know that there were like 2 ways you could. I had said the girl who
to make
know.
It simultaneous. I mean, I'm sure you knew, but it's a challenge to make it happen at once.
But I couldn't even begin to imagine what that would feel like. That's maybe what it is.
At once.
Right. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do have a lot of listeners who ask me about oral sex, about, men giving women oral sex.
Oh,
about,
really?
how it can be done, best. How do you train your men to do it? How do you
How do you
ask for
train
it,
them, right?
or make sure from the beginning
That they know.
this is done
So you're not
during
just pushing
every
their
sexual,
head down there?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, God.
And then
I'm not
is
so
there a
good
way
with
to
that,
prep
I have
them?
to say. Is there a way to prep them? I mean, these are all. Are these my questions that I sent in? No.
No. Well, there is, women out there now, at last, know that there is a cornucopia of, female pleasure, that there are many
Right.
ways to be pleasured,
Right.
and that if they are stuck, especially with one man, and in particular, if that man is the husband
Right.
or the long-term boyfriend, then they're not going to experience all these other adventurous ways. They don't necessarily want to go on the dating apps and try all kinds of guys and, eat with these guys. And they just want to find how they come better and, what they haven't yet, the vein of pleasure that they haven't hit upon or they
Right.
haven't, enhanced and like get to the gold.
Aren't there
But
any
not
YouTube
necessarily.
videos on this? You'd think there would be.
Well,
Don't you?
I've watched the YouTube videos, and again, it's all talk.
Oh, you're kidding! Like, there's
yeah.
no just like video. Like, this is how you do it
on the porn sites.
Yeah, but the
there's
porn
video.
sites, and I don't mean a porn video. I mean like a real video of like, this is really how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is how it works. Like,
Well, but you're a very orgasmic woman. You
Yeah,
just told us.
I am.
So how
there has to be.
how
There has to
how
be.
does every woman get to that?
I think you need clitoral stimulation. Like for me, that's what always pushes it over the edge.
of during the sex.
Yeah.
But also in between sex on your own to kind of teach your body, would you say? Because I think like masturbation is very helpful, for women to find how everything works and then take that information into the sex.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I've found, obviously, because I was late into the game, I found it's worked the opposite way with me. Like, I've found things that I like in sex that I then translate to masturbating.
Right.
Rather than the other way,
Mm-hmm.
So,
But masturbate with a dildo or just
right.
digitally?
Oh, with both.
Both, yeah.
And just new ways to use them that I didn't know I was into, that I didn't explore first, but that I found out during sex, like, worked.
But I think that one of the ways that has enabled you to kind of have a better relationship with sex is that you're game, right? That you're someone who says yes to experience and yes to adventure instead of like responding from a place of fear or climbing up or.
I am definitely a yes girl.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember hearing the story of Yoko Ono's Yes piece and how John Lennon wanted to marry her after he saw that. And
Tell us the story.
I believe the story was that he went to one of her exhibitions and there was a ladder and you would climb up the ladder, and at the top of the ladder there was a little magnifying glass hanging that you would look through, and it just said the word yes. Which is so beautiful and poetic, and the way that life should be approached. I mean, when you choose from a place of fear, you've already put yourself in a hell. So of course it's going to be a harder journey starting from there. But if you choose from a place of yes, like you're going to have experiences and be able to learn from them, even the bad ones, even the ones that almost kill you.
She's not talking about sex. She's talking about feelings.
Oh, sorry. Back to sex, though. I mean, because it all ties in. Why would we keep going if not for sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
do you think that because of your illness or your brush with death, you were able to liberate yourself from this idea, this worry of like, what will people say? Do I fit in? Which is really where a lot of these mental fears
yeah, you
come
know what?
from.
And that's what it all is. And that's exactly why. I decided I had already tested the waters and recognized that a lot of things I'd been told were wrong. And I thought, I got to just take the boat myself and not care
Right.
what
Yes.
anybody, because I need to have my own experiences. Everybody needs to have their own experiences.
Right. And
and
life
not lose
might be
sight of that.
short, and you don't know what happens tomorrow, and just try to say yes to, experience, as
I
long as
know.
it's safe and consensual.
And I stress that, right? Like in the day of where we're just so willing to watch other people's experiences. We need to remind ourselves to have them, to have connection and interaction. And
Yeah. And not be stuck to the screen, which is poisonous.
It is poisonous and intoxicating.
Yeah,
'Cause you
and
can get it
takes us
all.
out of reality into just making believe, entertainment, avatars, but away from the five senses. So try to come back to your senses as much as possible, right?
I think so.
Yeah, especially in this time of like digital consciousness and big tech taking over. I feel that we need to touch base with our senses
I mean,
many times a day.
Yeah, I'd much rather like a physical body than a screen any day.
Yeah, me too. Even a massage over just watching something on a screen a million times more fun and more pleasurable. It doesn't have to be sexual, just so long as it involves the sensual experience,
right?
Yeah. I mean, you could be like,
Right.
you
As
know,
long as you are
going through
taking
a
in the
time
information.
when you don't want to exchange sexual energy with another and you're experimenting by yourself, but you can still have sensual immersion.
Sure.
Yeah. Be felt, be
You know,
touched.
This is very interesting. My mother said to me, when I told her I was going to do the podcast, she doesn't know what it is, but I just knew it would make her nervous, so I told her. She said, "Are you going to be yourself?" You know, like, and I thought
that's a great one. Yeah.
And I thought, that's so odd that I would be anyone else, right? And yes, I could be, but wow, that's like such a nod to her generation that I can't be open and be myself. That there's a problem if I am me and there's.
Well, your future husband may listen in and not propose.
Or I may get 20
Kathy,
proposals.
Exactly. I mean, what is she worried about if not that? It's just like social judgment. And I mean, you're self-employed, so it's not your boss. So it's got to be the future husband.
Yeah.
Your prospects.
My prospects.
The guy.
Out the window.
Yeah. The eligible.
Oh, my God.
That's what it all comes down to,
And she probably doesn't even recognize it. You know what I mean? Like, because it's just
it's hard to recognize.
It's so beaten into her subconscious. Oh, God.
Well, that's why, speaking of like, how do we answer this question of so many women of finding more pleasure, better ways for pleasure, different ways of orgasm? Well, one example is that there is no female Viagra. There is no money given to research for
but that's
female
because women aren't in
sexuality
positions of power
because
where they're funding it. Once
Right.
we get into those positions, we can start funding that stuff. It's all been male heads. That's why all the medicine's geared for the men. Like, that's why I say things are changing and shifting.
They
because-
better be changing. And all the women out there, sisters, and all the female
Yeah.
folk, please join us in this effort to choose female in our work, in our practice, right?
Choose to make
in
it a
our
priority.
Consumption. You know how like we used to like no I went through some years where I would not buy anything Chinese, or I would I did not buy I still do not buy anything organic. Imagine if we did something where we would
just-
only buy women companies, women products, girl boss stuff, the wing.
I think
all of
that is the way to usher it in and move it along faster. Just bond together and stay strong.
Those of us who have access to our own money, and there should be more and more of us, we just encourage woman-only work.
I think so.
That would be already the beginning of a social movement that would transform things.
Yeah. Well, I'm game. I'm in. Count
Me
me
too.
in if I
Me
can,
too.
If I can find it.
We should organize that.
Yeah, I really like that, and that is how it will change and how it will shift.
Yeah, I mean, I was. The New York Times had an article recently about how a Consumer Technology Innovation Award was revoked from a company run by a woman that makes the sex toy that's a hands-free sex toy for women.
I saw that because I wanted to buy it.
She lost her finance.
I know, and I couldn't find it.
First, the articles came with like the pretty photo of this little blue semi-curve.
And I couldn't believe
it. Doesn't even look like it doesn't look like a dildo.
It looks completely non-threatening.
Right.
Then.
It doesn't look like a sex toy, period.
Right.
It's like a little semi-circular circumference.
A moon type thing.
Yeah. So apparently it was deemed immoral, obscene, indecent, profane, and not in keeping with like this award
they been to the
system or the image of. They haven't. No, that's exactly what it is.
This looks like it could be an incense
anything
burner
to do,
or an atomizer.
It does.
I know.
But anything to do with sexuality
an air plant holder.
is dirty and unwanted, and especially when it's geared toward women's sexuality.
Yeah,
So that's something else we as women have to do, is like go against that whole, shift this censorship and make it
censorship.
Inclusive.
It totally is censorship. God.
Yeah. Same thing with like the X ratings of movies. I mean, you have movies with the most horrific skin-crawling violence, heads decapitated, body parts flying off, just like, stuff that gets to your psyche and gives you nightmares and stays with you for so long. And if you have the nipple, forget the labia. If you have the nipple or, of course, the labia, that's it. The movie gets like the
I think men should have to wear
nobody can watch
men should
it.
have to cover their nipples. Right.
Well, no, we should be able to show our nipples.
No,
or
kidding.
Men should cover theirs.
They have to cover their nipples.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. And the same thing, like, why is it so shocking, especially with the female genitals, which don't show? I mean, unless you sit there in like a penthouse shot and you open your legs wide, what's the occasion? Within the story of the movie. Yeah, but like in the narrative of a movie, a naked woman is not going to just sit there and expose. Unless it's like for sexual reason.
Unless it's a rap video.
Or like naked yoga. I don't know. But that's again, that double standard, the violence, which pleases, of course, the man, and it's all about the masculine, is shown no problem.
So don't you think
Any
once
bit of
we're
like
in a
female
position,
skin?
Once we're all in these positions to call the shots, that will stop with the double standards? Don't you think that?
Yes,
do that?
I do.
Good, okay, because that's what I'm counting on.
To quote Tinkerbell in Peter Pan, I do believe in fairies. I do. No, actually, to revive Tinkerbell, right?
Because
that was the chant.
women are very reasonable. Men aren't, but women are very reasonable and want the world to be better and want everybody's children taken care of. We just want that.
We're more naturally empathetic because we raise the young, so we are built to feel for the other a little more.
Right, and
not completely. I mean, there are a lot of narcissistic and unreasonable women and
right. I just mean
driven
on
by
a
like
whole.
drama, who feed off drama. But that's because they have completely embraced the male stereotype role. And if they take a moment and
that's true.
Find their own truth, they're not going to be like that. But they need to stop.
No, we all just need to be able to cultivate a whole self.
Yeah, and an open space for
and I am concerned, like when I hear about how many women don't have orgasms, like that freaks me out. Yeah. Especially as somebody multi-orgasmic. Like, what are you talking about?
But that's the vast majority. And we're talking about the vast
I
majority
can't believe
of
it.
contemporary 21st century Western women. We're not even touching on the question
Right.
of what's happening in the Arab world,
Oh,
which
God.
is, billions of people, the China,
Right. Right.
India. If that's the Africa, that's like the vast majority of humanity, and those women we have no access to, but odds are they are not coming. They are
I'd say odds are very
they're
strong. I would
have
put money
zero
down on that.
words
Yep.
about sex.
Right, right. I would, yeah. I bet you're right.
They're still chattel. They're still bought and exchanged with the dowry. They're kept in the house. They're under the burqa. They're completely owned by the
How horrible.
dudes. Because what? Why? Because
I
he
bet
has
you
the
if
penis.
they have orgasms, they can't even show it. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah, well, I don't know if I think that's the least of the problems.
me too. Very first world problem I'm discussing here.
I think they're just trying to not get beaten up or
Right.
have the acid thrown on them or
God.
burned on
But
the fire.
here we are talking about them having orgasms and that at the same time.
Yeah.
It's all control. It's
Mhm.
always been control.
Mm-hmm. But we have not forgotten about them. They are our sisters, and we're going to do this together.
Yeah, I think I feel the same.
Yeah.
We got to do it here though first.
Yeah, well, we're here.
That's true.
We're here in Miami Beach having another episode of Speak Sex. Thank you, Kathy, for coming. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you Friday.